According to the myth from the ancient Japanese culture, the first Japanese gods gave life to Izanagi and Izanami, two gods in charge of creating heaven and earth. When these two gods were united, they came down from heaven to settle on earth, and the goddess gave birth to numerous gods, her children. But when Kagutsuchi, the god of fire, was born, childbirth was complicated, and Kagutsuchi ended burning his mother. So Izanami spent a very sick time until she dies. The main god, desperate and broken by the pain of loss, heads toward the land of death and darkness, known as Yomi, where he searches endlessly for his wife. Although he was warned that she could be able to return to the world of the living, he does not believe until he meets her, and she tells him that she has already eaten the food of the Yomi, and she cannot leave the underworld. He also wasn't able to fulfill the only condition that they imposed on him, not to look at his wife. So he lights a flame to see her, discovering that her body turned into a decomposing corpse. Then Izanagi is chased across the entire underworld by her, and she also leads warriors and gods behind him. After many difficulties, he managed to escape, moving a large rock over the opening that separates the underworld from the world of the living. From the other side, Izanami asks him to help her escape and threatens Izanagi, telling him that every day she will kill 1,000 humans. Her husband's response was that he will give life to 1,500 humans a day. Now I will tell the myth from the African town Kono. In the beginning there was nothing, neither matter nor light existed but only death, whose name was Sa, and lived with his wife and daughter. Needing a place for his family to live, Sa eventually used his magical powers to create a vast sea of mud. They lived in these conditions for many years. Finally, the god Alatangana came to visit Sa and his family. Alatangana was horrified at the mess in which they lived, and he condemned Sa for creating such a dirty place that lacked light and life. To set things right, Alatangana first consolidated the mud into the solid earth. Then he made plants to cover the new earth, and then animals to live on it. Even Sa realized that Alatangana had made the world a much better place, and he took Alatangana as his guest. Alatangana was wifeless, and eventually he decided that he wanted Sa's daughter for his wife, but Sa refused Alatangana's request. However, Alatangana wooed Sa's daughter, and eventually they moved together to a distant region of the earth. He and his new wife set up a happy home. They had 14 children, but he and his wife were shocked to find that their children spoke different languages that the parents didn't understand. Frustrated with this incident, Alatangana finally went to Sa for advice. Sa explained that this was a curse that he had put on his grandchildren because of the way he had stolen his daughter. Alatangana returned home, and eventually his children went off to form the peoples of the world. The French, the English, the Africans, and so on. Alatangana, his children, and his wife still lived in darkness because he couldn't find a way to make light. As before, his frustration forced him to call on Sa for help, but now he decided to send two messengers. He chose the tutu bird, a small red bird that is one of the first to arise each morning in the forest, and the rooster. These two birds went to ask Sa how to illuminate the world so that the new peoples of the world could see to work. When the two presented their problem to Sa, he invited them into his home and taught them a song which they could call forth daylight. Not long afterward, the rooster broke into song and the tutu bird sang its first notes. For the first time, dawn began to appear, and soon it was day. And since then, the day has begun the same way, with the call of the tutu bird and the crow of the rooster. Alatangana was grateful for the gift of the advice. However, Sa wasn't long in calling for payment of the debt. He demanded that in return he could, whenever he liked, claim any of Alatangana's offspring. Knowing his guilt and his debt to Sa, Alatangana agreed. And this is how Alatangana's children, the human people, must meet death whenever he calls for them. Having already explained the two myths, it is evident that they have some similarities and quite a few differences. Something important in which both coincide is that they covered the need of people from different cultures to give an answer with an explanation to the constant doubts that emerge about things or phenomena within everyday life. The values that are recognized within these myths aren't the common ones that we work with day by day in our lives. Among the majority of the gods in myths, it is recognized that they don't practice the most important values, but those I recognized were strength, ambition, courage, among others. The two myths I spoke about have in common that death, in a nutshell, arose from a threat or consequence determined by the antagonist of the story. However, I discovered that the Japanese myth has a lot in common with the Greek myth of Orpheus and Daphne, where likewise he couldn't see his wife in order to leave the underworld. This shows that there is a connection of mythology between different cultures around the world. Myths tend to change or modify as time passes until they adapt and extract fractions of them towards the present without realizing it.